Do you know that the life expectancy of a man is at least 10 years lower than that of a woman? Guys, men actually go through a lot of health issues and they need support. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Masterminds with Dr. Tosin. Apologies, I've been away for a little bit. I really hope I can become a bit more consistent as we go on. I am so sorry. But yeah, like I said, hopefully it's better from here. Special thanks again to those who have been engaging in our content. Special appreciation to everyone who has been watching our videos, who have been commenting, who have been liking the videos, who have been sharing the video. That's very important. And for those who have been, subscribing, thank you so much. Keep subscribing, keep being a part of this movement. We get straight to what we will be talking about today. I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about myself, but not just because I want to talk about myself, but also because I want to tell a story as to how I found myself here, how I started doing things relating, or how did I develop the interest or the passion for things relating to men's health? How did I start talking about men's health equity? What really brought this whole thing to me? I'm going to tell the story in different phases, from when I was young to when I finished med school, and then up till today. I'm just going to talk in different phases. If you grew up in the sort of area or environment that I grew up, highly patriarchal one, you will realize that, like I said in my previous video, there is a lot of expectations. There are lots and lots of expectations that people generally have for men. There are lots of expectations, societal norms actually, that sort of place certain expectations on men, certain demands on men. And I've said last time that many of these demands are actually quite good, they're quite noble. But again, those sort of growing up were some of the things that made me form this interest, as you see as the story progresses. Some point somewhere around, I think, 2012 or thereabout, I finished medical school. And then after internship, I got a job. So I got multiple jobs actually. At this point, I was working in two different organizations. And I saw certain things at that time that really stimulated some questions in my heart. Now, some of these questions include, or before I get to the question, let me tell you the story of how the two different places I was working sort of compared. The first one was in a primary healthcare center in Nigeria, in Epe, Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria. And I realized that most of the patients that I saw in that place were, to be honest, if I want to be very conservative, I would say 97% of my patients were women and children. Meaning that almost all. As a matter of fact, as I sit here today, I cannot honestly remember seeing a single male patient. And it was always interesting, at that point it wasn't much of a big deal. I just knew I was seeing patients, I was seeing women, I was seeing children. Maybe because of the way I grew up to an extent, it wasn't so much of a question. Along the line, I got this job that was also so the way this job worked was, the company that hired me was affiliated with a telecommunication company, and they had a program they called it Ask a Doctor or something like that. What Ask a Doctor means is that we as the doctors will be on the other end of things. People just needed to download a particular app on their phone, and they asked medical questions. So a lot of the questions they asked would be, they just having minor symptoms. They just put it on the private chat. One of the things I was quick to realize is, obviously with this private chat, you didn't get to see who was on the other side of it. So they didn't know the doctor on the other side. They just knew they were talking to a doctor. So created a bit of privacy for the patient. One of the things I realized, this was a bit interesting to me, is that for every 4 patients that I saw, and I'm saying about 75% of the patients that I saw were men. Very interesting. Now, if you have an inquisitive mind like mine, you will start thinking, or at that point, so many questions will start popping into your mind. And one of such will be that, why was it that when I work in this primary health care center, I was having everybody? But now that I work in this other place, I was having mostly men. And interestingly, most of the men that were coming to me were coming with issues around erectile dysfunction or sexual health. I started asking myself the question, why? A bit of, after a short while, the question was, at least I had ideas of what the answer to the question might be. Could it be that way that I grew up? Could it be that societal expectations that sort of make it almost impossible, or even almost a crime for men to seek support, for men to seek help, even when needed? Could that be the reason why men this new job, this second job that I was saying, provided a bit of a barrier? There was a veil between the doctor and the patient. It started giving me this impression that maybe men are likely to seek support if they have a place where they are guaranteed some form of privacy that sort of shields this, shield them away, that nobody is on the body person on the other side of the divide was not, directly seeing them, providing what you might call a safe space. Sometime in 2015, I came to Australia to study, to do masters in public health. And I remember that the first, maybe 1 or 2 classes, I had a session on health equity. Health equity basically says that, everybody has equitable access to health. Essentially saying that regardless of your race, regardless of your age, your gender, your sexual orientation, we all have equal access, basically, to health and health services. For me, if you know the kind of person I am, you would know that this would be, if at that point, I immediately knew that this is something I want to do, or one of the things I wanted to do, because I always so love epidemiology. So at that point, I was thinking, I'm going to find a way to merge being an epidemiologist with health equity. At that point, I was really thinking more in terms of the disadvantage. I was thinking in terms of refugees. I was thinking in terms of people that, whatever it is, what people would call social determinants of health today, whatever it is that could in any way disadvantage anybody from accessing health. So, after my master's degree, I was privileged, to get into a PhD, literally immediately, get into a PhD program. And I was one of those that also had the privilege of choosing the topic that they did a research on. And of course, I was, like I said earlier, I was this guy that I already decided I wanted to do something related to health equity. At that point, I was really thinking about humanitarian health. I was thinking about health in conflicts. So, good enough, that was what the scholarship was about. I was thinking about health in conflict. I was also thinking about, I didn't want to do too many clinical stuff. I decided I wanted to do something related to gender-based violence. So, as many people would know, PhD is really about contributing to knowledge. It's really about contributing original knowledge, basically, to an existing body of knowledge, So it was really about doing something new, doing something original, adding it to what exists. So what that means is that for you to find a topic, you need to do a literature review, essentially look at everything that has been written on a subject, to identify a gap, that is what has not been written or what has not been done, and then try to do it. So what I did was of course, I sat down, took a few days, weeks, to extensive literature review on gender-based violence. Specifically, I decided I wanted to narrow it down to sexual violence. And one of the things I quickly discovered was most of the articles on, sexual violence were really in terms of women as victims or as survivors of sexual violence, children as victims, survivors of sexual violence. I started asking the question that led me back, to my post-med school days. It started making me think, especially when I read in some of the articles that some men have actually been identified as also, possible survivors of sexual violence. I started asking myself that, so, if men have been identified as survivors of sexual violence, why then is nobody talking about them? Why then is nobody trying to provide solutions? Why then is nobody trying to help these people? I said to myself, I will make that a challenge. As a matter of fact, I remember some people suggesting to me that I should focus on men as perpetrators of sexual violence. And I was like, if I do that, I'm also going to continue this paradigm, what I usually describe as a male perpetrator, female victim paradigm. That belief that anytime you hear about a perpetrator, it has to be a man. anytime you hear about a victim, it has to be a woman. And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I'm interested in looking at men, like what's up with these men that are, that are experiencing sexual violence. I like to say at this point, just as I've said several times in my PhD thesis, at no point in my life should or would my interest in men's health in any way undermine the effort to support women's health. Health, in fact, that's doing that alone will be anti-health equity. So I definitely believe in women's health. I definitely believe in children's health. I believe that in the spirit of equity, everybody should have equitable access to health. So I went into the field, and I remember when I went to Uganda to do my research, one of these top government official, and I was, he was supposed to give an approval for the research. And I got in there, I told him that, look, I'm trying to do this research and that research. And I remember him asking me this question that, I remember the look on his face when he said to me, do men actually experience that? I said, well, this is what I'm here to find out. I said, okay, we'll be looking forward to seeing the product of my research and all of that. I also remember somebody at that point said to me that, not to me, said to someone else, I just overheard it, that I wasn't supposed to hear anyway, that, look, he's not going to find anybody to talk to him. But lo and behold, I went to the research field. I engaged men in qualitative and quantitative interviews. Quantitative and quantitative studies. The qualitative part, of course, I'm more of a quantitative researcher, but I also value the qualitative part, which essentially is about hearing the full gist, hearing the details, like the details essentially. And I remember going into the field and I saw men, I interviewed men, male survivors of sexual violence. Now, don't forget that when you say sexual violence, it does not mean rape is not the only form of sexual violence, if I would say it that way. But even in terms of rape, I saw men tell me stories about how they were ridiculously sexually violated. I saw men broke down in tears, sharing their experience with me. Horrible experiences, things that really pierced my heart when I was listening to them. In fact, in some instances, I had to take breaks just for me to be able to support my own mental health, because the experiences were gruesome, the experiences were terrible. Men definitely experience these things. And what I also found was that when I did the quantitative part of the part that has to do with the numbers, I realized that the rate at which men actually experience different forms of sexual violence, including rape, is ridiculous. It's way higher than what has been previously reported in literature. I published some of the papers. I will still publish some of the other ones that have to do with numbers. I'm working on that at the moment. I found from that research that men experience a whole lot of these different forms of sexual violence. Not just that these forms of sexual violence is also having multiple consequences on their physical health, their mental health, all aspects of their health, particularly mental health. A lot of my participants at the point I'll probably do a video that will talk about my results. But a lot of the participants in my studies at one point or the other have either attempted or thought about committing suicide. Many men are like that. And one of the things I also found was that the effect of sexual violence on these men was not just on them. The effect was also on their family members. Especially I did my research in Africa, and in most countries in Africa, society is patriarchal. Mostly the men are the ones that provide food, they provide money for the family. Now imagine the head of the house committing suicide, dying from suicide. What happens to the house? The poverty level increases, the community becomes unsafe, so many cascade of effects that made me say to myself, we have no other option but to support these survivors of sexual violence. What more? I found out so that when these people shared with me their experiences of sexual violence, some of them at the end of the process were able to come to me to say, Fosun, thank you for listening to us talk about our experience. What am I trying to say? Sharing their experience, they told me, was therapeutic. They found it extremely therapeutic, and that was a lot for me. And that made me decide that I want to pursue this path. I want to do this. I want to support men. But when I finished, of course, like I've said before, I got into this postdoctoral fellowship, which I'm doing at the moment. I am beyond sexual violence. I then saw different forms of health problems that men actually go through. Do you know that the rates of suicide globally for the last 2 decades or thereabout have been consistently higher amongst men. Do you know that the life expectancy of a man is at least 10 years, lower than that of a woman? Do you know that many mental health issues, many determinants of health are worse for men? But guess what? Most of the NGOs that we have supporting people today, as a matter of fact, I doubt if anybody can actually identify 2, 3 that support men. The truth is this: our silence on the issue of men's health or men generally, because we also think about the justice system. Most of the time, if there is an issue between a man and a woman, the basic assumption is that the man is at fault. Most of the time, it's like that. But the truth is, and of course, some of these things have effect on their health, but this is the truth. Silence on this topic is not going to, it's not going to preclude men from the consequences of their health problems. And that's why I said to myself, this is what I want to make a life journey. This is what I want to make my life passion. This is what I want to do. Somebody has got to stand up for men. Somebody has got to, support men. And I really hope, Father, the whole goal of this particular video is to create a bit of awareness, to let us know that, guys, men actually go through a lot of health issues and they need support. They need you to support. They need me to support. And that's why on this channel, we'll be doing a lot on men's health. And we're doing a lot of men's equity for men. And we'll also be doing a lot of things that I've said in the last 2 videos, things that will support men and put them in a better place. Because the truth is this, like I said, as we're focusing on everybody else, we need to also pay attention to men. I really invite you to join me on this journey as I go, just to dig into these things and see how we can make things better for men. I would encourage you to share this video, to like this video, to subscribe to this channel. It's not just going to end with the men, but also it's going to have a trickle-down effect on their families and on the society. Thank you so much for listening once again. Until I see you again next time, I love you.